Good morning, afternoon, and evening, depending on what part of the globe you're in. My name is Anand Raja, and I'm the Director of Global Pre-Sales for Developer Tools here at Infragistics. I am joined by my colleague, Brian Lagunas, who is a Product Manager of our XAML line of products and tools at Infragistics. Today's webinar is about building Microsoft Office-inspired applications in Windows Forms and WPF. Before we get started, let's take a quick look at the agenda. We're going to start out by talking about the Office style of UI. We'll talk about its evolution, the main elements, and the benefits of using this style. We'll then talk about Infragistics tools and offerings that are going to help you build Office-inspired applications. We'll then do a demo of building an Office-inspired application using Windows Forms. And then I'm going to hand it off to Brian Lagunas, who is going to cover building WPF Office-inspired applications using WPF. So before we talk about the parts of an Office-style user interface or how to build one, what I'd like to do is take a step back and briefly talk about the advantages. So what are the advantages of using an Office-style user interface? Well, it's pretty simple. The most important advantage is that your end enterprise users are very familiar with the paradigm, right? So think about Word, Outlook, Excel, right? These Office interfaces provide a very intuitive way for your end users to accomplish their task, which at the end of the day is one of the main goals of any user interface. And what's really interesting about the Office style of UI is that it didn't come overnight. This is something that has evolved, and it has evolved through years and years of Microsoft's products growing and becoming more complex. And if you think about the challenges of UI, one of the main challenges is that as your application becomes more and more complex, or as you add more and more functionality to your application, what happens is your end users find it more and more difficult to accomplish their tasks. And the reason is that the more pieces of functionality you have, the harder it is to access a particular piece, right? Things just happen to get lost in the mix. So in its present state, the Office style of user interface is very intuitive. Like I mentioned before, I think everyone knows that their end users are very comfortable with it, but that hasn't always been the case. So what we're going to do now is take a trip down memory lane, and we'll take Microsoft Word as an example. We'll look at the early versions and what happened as Word evolved to its present state. So what we're going to do is examine that evolution, and then we'll talk about how Microsoft handled that challenge. So here we have the first version of Word for Windows. And just take a look at the toolbar here. Right, pretty simple. The first version had about 100 commands. So whether you wanted to underline your print, you wanted to bold it, you wanted to do double spacing, it was pretty easy to find the command because all the commands were basically right on the toolbar, right in clear view. But as the product progressed and matured, and more and more pieces of functionality came out, we started experiencing command overload. So take a look at the toolbar now. Now you can see more and more commands have been released. There's more and more pieces of functionality with every single version of Word that gets released. Again, Word 97, you see not only are there more commands, now there's actually different areas for you to move and manipulate toolbars. And you needed that because it became out of control. It's very difficult to try to organize your commands. Now you hit Word 2003. At this stage, we had over 1,500 commands. Just imagine that. We started out with 100. with all the commands available right from the toolbar. Now we fast forward to 2003, 1,500 commands. Just imagine how challenging it is for your end user to find anything, right? Imagine if you're new to Word and just coming into this app. It's very challenging. So Microsoft was aware of these challenges, and they knew that they had to do something about this. They knew that this was a challenge that they had to solve if they were to continue growing their base of users. So in 2007, they came out with a concept called Fluent User Interface. And the whole concept of Fluent User Interface was to design your user interface in such a way that your end users could browse, could pick and click, and easily find anything that they're looking for. So if you want the paste command, you know it's easily on the Home tab. If you want spell check, you know all you have to do is tap or click that Review tab, and you can have all the commands that are under review. Right? So this is the main concept behind Fluent UI. It was a way to organize your commands visually so your end users would be more productive. In a nutshell, that's what it was. So let's talk about tangibles. What came with Fluent UI? Well, now let's take a look at the different parts of an Office-style UI. So the most important thing is a ribbon. You have a ribbon to organize your commands for your end users, right? So take a look at the ribbon here. The ribbon comes with tabs: Home, Insert, Design, Page Layout, etc. So that's your tab. And then within a particular tab, you have groupings or groups. So here you can see we have Clipboard. We have another group that's called Font. We have another group on the same Home tab that's Paragraph, etc. Right? And in each of these groups, you have commands. So with this type of UI grouping or UI design, it really makes it quite simple for your end users to browse, pick, and click, and easily find whatever they're looking for. So you also have the Quick Access toolbar, which is on the top. Again, this is independent of whatever tab you're on. You can always go to the Quick Access toolbar and find any command that you want. And finally, we have the Backstage. So what the Backstage is a full screen UI that really operates at the file or application level. So let's switch back to the ribbon for a second here. So when you're talking about the ribbon, you're generally talking about commands that are in the context of the task at hand. For instance, if I'm typing a paragraph up and I have my sentence highlighted, what I can do is I can go to Font and just tap bold, hit underline, and basically those commands act on whatever objects or activity that are currently in context, right? For instance, I'm typing a paragraph. So in contrast to that, what the Backstage is the Backstage gives you access to functionality that's at the file level, right, or application level. For instance, you want to print the whole file. You want to save the whole file. You might want to export. Or the application level, you want to change some options, right? So that's what the Backstage is used for. And while there are other parts of an Office-style user interface that you need to know about, the three main pieces that I want to concentrate in today's webinar, or my portion of today's webinar, are the ribbon, Backstage, and Quick Access toolbar. So what I'm going to do next is talk about the offerings that we provide you with Windows Forms to create these types of Office-inspired applications. Once I'm finished, Brian Lagunas is going to go over WPF, and he's going to talk about the offerings and do some demos in WPF. So as far as Windows Forms are concerned, one of the most important tools that we provide you with is the Office 2013 ribbon, and this is fully functional. So with this ribbon, you're able to create tabs, groups, commands, and you can also use the Quick Access toolbar. We also provide you a fully functional Backstage menu. You can use our mini toolbar to provide that contextual type of menu that you're used to with the Office documents. And we also have a task pane that gives you that Outlook task look and feel. Now that we covered the main components and benefits of an Office-style user interface, let's go ahead and build a Windows Office-style app right from scratch. We're going to be building the user interface of an order management system. And what we're going to do is give it the Office look and feel by creating a ribbon, like you see here in the Word doc, and a quick access toolbar, like you see right here, the top of the Word app, as well as a backstage, right? So those are the three pieces that we're going to build into our sample little application. So let's go ahead and close the PowerPoint presentation down, open Visual Studio, and get started. So I've opened up Visual Studio 2013, and the first thing that we're going to do is do File, New Project. And we'll start with a Windows Forms application. I'm just going to keep all the defaults here and hit OK. So let's just start by changing some of the basic properties. Let's set an application icon. Do something a little different than the default. I'll just go ahead and use an Infragistics icon. And let's change the name of the form. Or you know what, we'll just go ahead and change the text on the form. We're naming our app Order Manager. So the first thing that we're going to do to get that Office-inspired look and feel is create that ribbon. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is to use the Ultra Toolbars Manager. So we're going to go to the toolbox and type that in. Let's just go ahead and type in Tools Bar. There we go. So go ahead and double click on that Toolbars Manager. I'll go ahead and add it to your project. You'll notice that when you add it to the project, an initialization screen will come up and ask you if you want to use a panel control, which is a control that's going to make it a lot easier for you to manage your appearance. So what I'm going to do is choose the middle option here. It's basically a lightweight panel control. And click OK. So let's take a look at this here. So to create the ribbon, the first thing that you do is click Show Ribbon. And let me just explain really briefly what you're looking at here. So at the top here, you have your quick access toolbar. So this is where you're going to add quick access commands. This area right here is for ribbon tabs. So let's just briefly cover the object model here. You have a ribbon. The ribbon has tabs like so. And each tab has one or more groupings. So we call these groups. And in each group, you have one or more tools. And you can think of a tool as a reusable command, such as save, copy, or paste, right? Once you create a tool, you can have it available at a ribbon tab or at the quick access toolbar, right? So the whole point is you can reuse those. So the first tab that we're going to build out is a home tab. So let's go ahead and click on the ribbon. I'm going to hit F4 to pull up the properties, and I'm going to click this button right here, which gives me the selected object. So let's just change the caption. I'm going to call it home. And I'm not going to bother changing the key, etc. We're just going to make this a really quick demo. So we have home. Second thing I want to do is change the caption of this group. So by default, you can see it's called Ribbon Group 1. Again, F4, and we're going to change the caption. And we're going to call that Clipboard. We're going to use this area for a cut, copy, paste. Who knows, maybe even throw save in there. Okay, great. So now we have the tab Home in the ribbon, and we have one group so far called Clipboard. Let's go ahead and start building out this group. We get some more real estate here by closing the toolbar. So the first thing we're going to do here is click right on this Insert New Tool. You see you have the option of existing tool, but we don't have any existing tools defined, so we're going to go ahead and click Insert New Tool. And the first thing that you'll notice is tool type. So you have the following options. You can use various controls anywhere from a label, a text box, to a standard button. So we're going to go ahead and use a button. And what we're going to do, like I mentioned before, is the cut, copy, paste functionality. So let's pull up Word really quickly and just take a look. So let's just take a look at what we're trying to build. So we have the Home tab here of the ribbon. In the Home tab, we have one grouping called Clipboard, then we have Paste, Cut, Copy, etc. So this is what we're trying to build out here. Let me minimize Word, and we said New Tool. It's going to be a button. The caption is going to be Paste, and I'm going to click Add right here. And let's take a look at what we have. We have one tool in our group called Paste. And this is the button right here. So I'm going to right-click on this to configure it. We'll right-click on it. The first thing that you need to do is set the preferred size. So it's at the default right now. We're going to change it to large because if you remember on Word, let me pull that up, we have a nice big button, right? So that's what we're going to try to recreate. So I set the preferred size to large. Next thing that we want to do is set an image. So we go right over to Images, and you see Set Small or Set Large Image. Now the reason why you have both options is because, like I mentioned before, you can reuse tools. So I could have a paste button that's large with a large image, but I could use it in another area and make it small, and then it would utilize this small image. So in this case, we're just going to use it once. We're going to use the large image, so I'm going to select that by clicking this button. And we don't have any resources loaded yet in our project, so I'm going to click Import, and I already have a set of images ready for me. So I'm just going to look for Paste. And with the large images, you're going to want to use a 32 by 32. For the smaller size, you can use 24. So I'm going to go ahead and click Paste the 32 by 32 version, and there we go. So now I have my Paste button. Now let's bring back Word again. You can see we have a small cut and a small copy. So let's go ahead and create that. Again, let's do the same thing. Insert New Tool. It's going to be a button. We're going to call this Cut. And I'm going to go through this a little bit quicker now because we already saw how to do it the first time. So let me just breeze through this. And while I'm in this dialog, I already added Cut. I'm going to go ahead and add Copy, and we'll configure them later. I'll say Add again, and then we'll do Save. Okay, let's take a look at what we have. So we have Paste, which we finished configuring. We now have Cut, Copy, and Save. Let's quickly configure these. Preferred size, we're going to leave this default because we want this small. So we're just going to go ahead and set a small image for the cut. Again, all I have to do is point to my resource, tap to Import, and let's find cut. That is 24. Good. So this is 24 by 24. That's what we want for the small image. And I'm going to go ahead and tap OK. There we go. So we have cut done. Let's keep building. Let's keep the same paste. Set small image. Import that. We go to copy, and we're looking for the 24 by 24 image. We got that. Hit OK. OK, and there you see it's all coming together, right? So the last thing that we're going to do on this tab is save. We're going to do something a little special with save here. So watch this. I'm going to set the preferred size to large. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to set two images. I'm going to set a large image, which we're going to use right here on this grouping. And it looks like I have to dig up that one a bit. Let me just search in my icon folder. And we have save here. Save 32. That's perfect. Good. So now we have that large save button, right? Now let's just create another ribbon tab. So I just clicked on this other tab. So we're going to create our second tab, and our second tab is going to be called Review. We're just going to have one button there. We'll have a spell check. So I hit F4, pull up Properties. Let's change this tab name to Review. That's all we need to do here. And so let's click into, you can see here you can switch back from tab to tab. I clicked on the Review tab. I clicked New Group, and let's do this. Let's name this group here Editing. Or actually, since it's Review, let's just call it Proofing. So again, bring up Properties. I go ahead to the selected object, which is the group, and we're just going to change the name here. So let's give it a caption of Proofing. Okay, looks good to me. And here we have Proofing. What do we do? Same thing. Hit Insert New Tool. It's going to be called Spelling Grammar. And we're just going to go ahead and configure its preferred size to large. And we're going to go ahead and configure that large image. So let's go ahead and find that image. So we're looking for spelling, and now we have the spell check. There we go. So now we have our spelling button right here. We have our spelling command under Review. That looks good to me. And let's just hit F5, see what this looks like so far. And if you'll notice that when I hit F5, you didn't see the ribbon right away. That's because I didn't correctly set the size of the form. So that was a mistake. I just manually expanded that to get it to show. You can see our home ribbon. We have paste, cut, copy, save on that home tab. And on the Review tab, we have spell checking. Okay, so these are the two that we have right now. Let's just do one more thing. In the Home tab itself, let's add one more group, just so you can see what a tab looks like with additional groups and how you do that. So I'm going to click New Group, and I think everyone remembers how to set this up. Let's go ahead and start changing some of the information in this, some of the properties. The first thing that I want to point out, one thing that you're going to need to know as you start going through and making a really complex or intricate ribbon is you're going to really need to get a handle on the object model so you know where to go to adjust any property. So I'm going to show you a really easy way to adjust properties here. You see that I've clicked on the ribbon itself, right? So this is the ribbon control that I've clicked on. We're going to bring up the properties here, did an F4. Now I go to Custom Property Pages. Now in this dialog, it's really nice because I can browse the entire object hierarchy and set properties very easily. So remember, I'm on the ribbon itself. So remember the object hierarchy. So under the ribbon, you have tabs, right? The ribbon has tabs. And this is a collection of tabs. Remember, we have two. We have Home and Review. Now, tabs have groups. So I'm going to go to the Home tab, and on that, I'm going to expand the collection of groups. So now I have Group 1, which we titled Clipboard. That was a caption. And we're going to go to group number 2 and just change the caption. It's going to be called editing. Okay, let's see how that looks. That looks beautiful to me. So let's go ahead and just quickly add a few buttons to it. Insert new tool. We're going to do find, and let's do replace. And finally, let's do an undo and a redo. Okay, good. We'll configure these really quickly. Again, set preferred size to large on find, and I'm going to go ahead and set a large image on find. Import. We find it 32. That's perfect. Hit OK. We've got our find done. Let's quickly do replace. Preferred size is going to be large. And we're going to go ahead and set that large image. There we go. And we'll quickly do undo and redo. Preferred size, we're going to leave them small. We're just going to set that small image. So import, again, for undo, again, we're going to use the 24 by 24. And we're going to set an image for redo as well. Same thing. There we go. So let's just take a look at what we have so far. Gonna make this a little bit bigger. F5. So here we have our Home tab. In the Home tab, we have one group called Clipboard, and then we have another group called Editing, and you can see the buttons that we have here, right? We have all of our tools in the form of buttons. We also have Review. Now we're going to do something a little different. Let's go back to Design Mode. So again, just for review, we have our ribbon. And we have our tabs in our ribbon with groups. And the groups have our tools, right? So these are our commands. Now what we want to do is set a tool in the Quick Access toolbar. So if you remember, the Quick Access toolbar is this area right here. And like I mentioned before, you can either create a new tool here by inserting a new tool, or you can insert an existing tool. So what we're going to do is we're going to reuse one of our tools that we previously created. So I'm going to click Insert Existing Tool, and we're going to use Save. Remember this? This is the same save that's on the clipboard, right? So we just reuse that tool by clicking Insert. Now if you notice here, you don't see an image. The reason why is we haven't set the small image for save. We completely configured that tool, but we just didn't set its small image. So I'm going to right click on it, go to Images, and select Set Small Image. And let's go ahead and set that. Save 24, right? We use 32 for the big one. We use 24 by 24 for that small one. And there we go. Look at that. Let's just go ahead and quickly do an F5 to run that. See what this looks like so far. Again, quick access. You have your save command. So you can see that we have our ribbon created, and we've got some wonderful tools. We also have our quick access toolbar, and we're reusing our save tool here. So now what we're going to do is build our backstage. So again, let's switch back to Word just to take a look at what we're going to do. So you can see that we've completely created our ribbon and a quick access toolbar. What we're going to do now is create this backstage. So I want to point out one thing before we actually create that backstage. Let's pull up Word again. So let's just take a look at our app. See if I can close this down. So let's take a look at our app versus Word, which is 2013. If you look at this button right here, right, you notice that on 2013 you don't have that. So this is Office 2013 on the right, and you can see this button back to our app here looks like it's coming from a previous year style. So in 2007, that was the Office style. If you remembered, you'd have a little button Office icon here, and when you click this, your backstage options would show up. It wasn't a true backstage, but you'd have file level options that would show up. So with Office 2010, Microsoft replaced that button with this file menu. And that's what brings up Backstage, right? So you can see, let me go back. Again, I click File, and now I have my Backstage. Okay, so that's what we're trying to accomplish. Of course, we could use a previous style, but we want to make this modern, so we're going to use the latest. So let's go ahead back to Visual Studio and create that modern style. So to do that, the first thing you have to do is go to your properties of that toolbar manager. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that up. And you're going to need to set two properties here. So we're going to scroll down and look for the style property. Here it is, and you can see it's set to the default. If you look down at the description here, you can read the different options that you have. But like I mentioned before, we want Office 2013. So we're going to go ahead and click Office 2013. And you can see immediately the style of our ribbon changed to match Word. So let's go ahead and look at, let's bring back Word. And you can see now it closely resembles. We have File, right? We no longer have that Office button. Okay? So now what we're going to need to do is go to the ribbon and configure one property under the ribbon. And that's our File Menu Style. We're going to change that to the Application Menu 2010. Okay? Now that we've done those two things, we're now ready to implement the Backstage. To access the Backstage view, you simply click on File. So I just clicked on File, and you can see here, I'm now presented with my Backstage view. And this is very similar to the ribbon. With a Backstage view, you're free to introduce tools and even reuse them. So let's do this. We're going to go ahead and just create two tools. We're going to do a new and an open, right? So think about this. This is an order management application. So at the level of the app or the file, what are the types of things that you want your end users to do? Well, number one is to create a new order, right? Number two might be to open an order. So let's go ahead and create new. So I'm going to say insert new tool over here on the left. And we're not going to use the button type. And I'll explain why. We're going to use what's called a pop-up menu. And the reason why is this is not going to be a definitive command. A definitive command is basically a backstage tool that does one action that doesn't require additional choices and typically sends you back into the document. Okay, so if you want to use a definitive command, you could just go ahead and use a button, right? And that button, when the button was clicked, you'd fire your code, take your user back to the context or the page or the document, right? In this case, we're going to give the user some options for new, right? You can create a new customer, create a new order, or a new report. So I'm going to set new in this caption, and we'll click add. Second one will be open, right? And again, you'll be able to open various types of entities or documents. Okay, good. So we have new and open. Now let's configure what you see on the right-hand side when you click new. And again, let me bring Word back just so you see what's happening here. So I've gone back to the Word application. Let's go to the backstage. And here you can see I click on Info, and on the right-hand side, my option changes. If I click on New, you can see that I've got different options for new, open, same thing, right? So this is the paradigm that we're using. Let's go ahead and minimize this. So for new, the first thing that we're going to do is we want we want a label here. So what I'm going to do is say new tool. I'm not going to set a caption here. I'm just going to use a regular label, but I'll explain why I'm not setting a caption. What I want to do here is I want to configure this using my own styling. So I'm going to choose set description on menu. And this is where I'm actually going to configure the text that's going to show up. So let's go to about 28. That looks like a good font size. I'm going to hit OK. Let's see what this looks like. That's perfect. So we have new. Let's do the same thing for open. New tool. It'll be a label. We're not going to give it a caption. We got to get a key for that. And go ahead and right click on it and set description on menu. We're going to call this open. Go down. Perfect. Let's see what we have so far. So we've got new and we've got open. So let's just finish this off by creating some tools under new. So again, you have new. What are your options? How about create customer or new order? So I'll say insert new tool. This time it'll just be a button. It's going to be no options, no additional options under this. So let's say create customer. And we'll add another button. We'll say for a caption, how about start new order? And finally another one, let's do generate report, right? So you can have a new report, new order, or new customer. And just as we did with the ribbon, all we need to do here is configure. So for images, set large image. And I'm going to use the large 32 by 32 icon. Let's take a look, make sure it looks like we intended it to. Perfect. Start new order. Again, all you have to do is set your large image size. And finally, we have generate report. So I'm going to set that image. Let's take a look at it. There we go. Let's just hit F5 and see what that looks like. So here I have my ribbon, right? 2 tabs, home, review, and let's look at that backstage. Oh, wonderful. So you can see here under new, I have my options, creating a new customer, etc. And if I go to the other tab, I could place some buttons here as well, which we're not going to go through in this demo. Okay, so now we have our ribbon set up, we have our tools set up, and we also have our backstage. Now, all we need to do to move forward is actually put some code behind these tools or buttons. So let's go ahead and do that. So when your end user clicks on any one of these tools, what's going to happen is the tool click event's going to fire. And all you have to do here is interrogate the argument that comes in to find out what button, what particular button or what particular tool was clicked. And then you can go ahead and handle that. So what we're going to do here is write a switch statement. And all we're going to do is interrogate that property. Okay. And it's the key property. That's what we're going to need to find out. So case, paste, just give ourselves a little message. Okay, looks good to me here. Right, so all we did is we're handling that click event, we're inspecting that argument to see what key is coming through, and if it's paste, we're going to go ahead and just throw up a message box. And probably wants this. There we go. Okay, let's F5, run that guy. So here you go. Let's click save first, make sure nothing happens. Great, let's go ahead and do paste. There we go. So you can see it's very easy, right, to handle any of those events. Let's do another thing here. Let's say you've got 100 different buttons. Let's say 1,500 different buttons, and you just added one. You're not really sure what the key is. You're starting to get confused, but you just want to go ahead and and find out, to write some code behind it. So all you have to do is set a breakpoint here. And let's go ahead and click something else. Let's click find. Put the breakpoint in the right location. That always helps. And let's click find. And you see find, clicking find invoked this like we expected. And you can see right here in the autos that the key is find, right? So you can go ahead now and stop, and you can go ahead and repeat this for all, right? But there is an easy way. There's an easier way of doing this, right? I could go ahead and write my own case statement for every single one. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some of the conveniences that Infragistics gives you to get this done a lot quicker. Let me clean up that hand code that I wrote. And let's do this. We'll go back to the designer. We're going to go to Ultra Toolbar with the manager, bring up the property, and notice that. So at the bottom of the properties box, you have generate tool click code. I'm going to click this button here, and look what you have here. You have a list of every single one of your commands, right? So these are all your tools, and this little wizard here will generate that code, that switch code for you. So what I'm going to do here is just say select all. So now I've just selected all of my commands. On the right hand side, I have all of my code that I need. I'm going to select all, copy to the clipboard, close this, and I go right back here and just paste that in. And that's all there is to it. So let's just do this. Write some quick code here to make sure this works. All right, let's go ahead and try this guy out. F5. I wrote some code behind the spelling and grammar button. Let's go ahead and go to review, spelling and grammar, and great. Works perfectly. And remember, it works on all tools. So that includes your ribbon, it includes your quick access toolbar, as well as the backstage. So just to wrap up this demo here, so what we're going to do to wrap this up is just have our app up, and let's go ahead and bring up Word too, just to take a final look at what we tried to accomplish, what we did accomplish. So we're basically trying to recreate a very similar navigation and command access paradigm, right? So if you look at the ribbon here, you can see we did just that. We have a nice ribbon. We've got some tabs here. We've got groups, just like we see on the Real Word app on the right. And just like we have with the Word on the right, we have our very own backstage. So you can just imagine that when you present an application like this to your business users, they're going to be very familiar with this paradigm, right? It's going to be very easy for them to be up and running with your application. They're going to be very productive very quickly. Okay, so I'm glad, well, I hope that you enjoyed this demo, and I'm now happy to turn it over to my friend and colleague, Brian Lagunas, who's going to cover the WPF side of things. I'll be around after Brian's finished to answer questions as well. So if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the box right now. My contact information will also be given at the end, so feel free to email me, hit me up on Twitter, contact me in any way, shape, or form you'd like. Thanks a lot for listening, guys.
Thanks, Anand. As Anand mentioned, my name is Brian Lagunas, and I am the product manager for all the XAML controls here at Infragistics. And today I'm going to be talking to you about how to build Office-inspired applications using our WPF controls. So let's just go ahead and jump right into it. The first thing I want to talk about is some of the theming improvements we have around Office 2013. We've launched a new Office 2013 theme for all of our controls. We've also added support for Microsoft intrinsic controls, meaning simple controls like your checkbox, your list box, your buttons, your toggle buttons, controls like that, and even some controls from the Microsoft Toolkit. Now, we don't support all Microsoft controls or the themes because obviously we want you to use our controls in replacement for Microsoft controls, but we do support a good number of commonly used Microsoft controls out of the box. We've also added a couple new features to the ribbon that we're going to be seeing today. We added the new Office 2013 Backstage. Anand did a great job talking about the Backstage for the Windows Forms. Now we're going to see how we can do that with setting a single property on our WPF side of things. The XAML ribbon also got a new tab level toolbar. This is the sign-in area. This is commonly used where Microsoft uses for you to sign into your account to the Office products. So we'll look at that feature in depth in a little bit as well. And then our XAML ribbon window also got a new Chrome feature. So now our window Chrome for our XAML ribbon window matches exactly like you would expect the new Office 2013 to work. We also have a XAML rich text editor. Now, if you're building Word, this is what it is basically. Our rich text editor mimics Word functionality. You can even open Word documents. You have all the editing and text formatting abilities you would expect, objects such as images and tables and much more. What's really unique about ours is you can import and export to RTF, HTML support, and DocX. And what's really cool about the way we implemented this is you can actually have one rich text editor import and export to all those different formats, all three all at once. And one of the biggest things that makes us, that separates us from Microsoft and other vendors is we have MVVM support. What's that mean? That means I can actually data bind to the serialized content, the rich text that this editor is going to display. I can data bind that to a property in my view model. Very simple, and we're going to see how we can do that today. Another control that may be useful when building Office-inspired apps is a diagramming control. Now, right now, as it sits in your toolbox with the 14.1 release, this is a CTP control, meaning that this is a community technology preview. This is your chance to check this control out, play with it, and provide us feedback for things that it should do or should do better, things you like, things you don't like. Basically, it's your chance to help us improve the control before we release it as an RTM control in 14.2. Now, of course, it does everything you would expect Visio would do. It's high performance. It is the highest performing diagramming control on the market right now. We have a number of predefined shapes, but you can provide your own custom shape templates as well. You can also create your own custom number of connection points. So basically those areas around the shape where your objects connect to, where you're making those connections between shapes. And of course you have the obvious selection, resizing, drag, drop, copy, paste, all the diagramming functionality you would expect. But once again, where we're going to shine is on our MVVM friendliness. We put a lot of effort into improving the MVVM friendliness of our controls, and this diagram is no exception. We support data binding right out of the box. Unfortunately, I want to mention this. Right now, the version you have in your toolbox right now does not support data binding. But when 14.2 releases, it will support data binding. So your version does not support it. The version I have does. Okay, and you'll be able to data bind to any type of object structure that you have. You don't have to implement any interfaces. You don't have to tightly couple any of your model objects to anything related to the control. You bring your objects and then you just bind to them. And it doesn't even mean the structure. It can be a hierarchical child-parent, grandchild relationship. We'll figure that out for you. Or it can be just a directly flat list of objects, and then you can tell us how those relationships are met, and we'll just connect everything for you automatically. Very easy. Another really cool control for building Office-inspired apps I want to talk about is our new spreadsheet control. Now this thing is really cool. This is Excel. That's what it is. It's taking Excel, sticking it in your own custom application, and you never have to even have Excel, Microsoft's version of Excel, installed on your machine. You'll be able to open, edit, and save Excel documents right from your own application, like I said, with never having Excel installed. Now, the version you have right now on your machine is also a CTP. Back again, what we're talking about, the Community Technology Preview. This is a very, very early bits. And actually, I would say that the version you have access to now in your toolbox is almost like pre-alpha. It's very, very early in the development cycle of this control, but we are working really hard on improving it. And today, we're going to see a demo of what it exists today. So I have a special version that I'm going to show you. It's kind of like a preview that will kind of give you a taste of the functionality you're going to get when the control does RTM and with the 14.2 release. So enough talk. Let's jump right into code. You know me, I'm not a big fan of slides. I like Visual Studio, so let's go build some Office apps. In this demo, we're going to take a quick look at some of the new features we've added to our XAMPP ribbon and XAMPP ribbon window to help give your applications that Office 2013 look and feel. So first, let's take a quick look at the app we're going to be working with today to get a feel of how this is built. As you can see, we have a main window with a XAMPP ribbon window defined. We've already defined our ribbon control, and we have a very simple application menu that targets the 2010 look and feel. So if you remember Office 2010, it had a backstage that looked different than the Office 2007 with the round button in the corner that you see in our design surface. So we're going to use the Office application menu 2010. We have a couple of buttons up here that we're going to be using later on. And then, of course, we have an empty spot grid placeholder where we're going to be using later on in the demo. So let's go ahead and run the app and see what it looks like when it's running. As you can see, we have our ribbon window, we have some buttons in a group, we have one tab, and we have our file menu with our backstage. Works as expected. Great. Very simple app. Now, I don't like the look of that app. You know, Office 2013, it looks clean, it looks modern, I really like it, and I want to give my application that same look and feel. I want the window chrome, you know, I want the nice, clean, modern tabs and buttons and colors. So I'm going to just select the XAMPP ribbon element in my visual tree here, and then I'm going to just set the theme property equal to Office 2013. Now I'm going to run this application. And look, we immediately have that nice, clean, modern look of Office 2013. Notice the buttons, notice how the grouping is styled, notice the square angles on the tab. But I also want you to pay attention to the window chrome. You see how the window chrome is nice, has that clean, straight line with the drop shadow and the color. This is exactly the chrome that Microsoft Office uses. Now let's take a look at the backstage. We're going to hit the file. Now we have that Office 2013 backstage. It looks, behaves, and acts just like Office 2013. So it's that easy to update your current WPF applications or create any new Office-inspired WPF apps and give your users that Office 2013 look and feel. But that's not all. Let's say that you don't like that blue around there. You know what? Well, you can change that. Simply set the application accent color to a different color. Let's say you want red. That might be nice, right? So let's run the application. And then when the window shows, you're going to see that the accent color of your backstage, of the window Chrome, it's now red. Even of the highlights of the buttons for minimize, maximize, and close. You get all that for free just by setting a single property. Very powerful. Now here's just another scenario. Let's say that, sure, you have a main app, you know, your main shell of your application contains the ribbon, but what about all the other windows? What about the other dialogues that pop up that you still want that window Chrome, but you don't use a ribbon with it? It's just a dialogue, but it needs to match the overall feel. Well, no problem. We have a solution for you there too. Let's go ahead and just for demonstration purposes, let's just go ahead and delete this ribbon altogether from the content host. So now we'll run the app and see what we have. Okay, we just have a blank ribbon window. Okay, no problem. Nothing's in it, no big deal, but I still want that nice Chrome. So I'm going to set the theme on the ribbon window content host element now to Office 2013. Let's run the app. There we go. We got that nice clean Chrome again. Okay, so what about accent color? How do we handle this? Well, this is a little different. We're going to have to add a namespace, and we're going to use an attached property off the ribbon window content host, and we're just going to set the accent color. We can use red again because, you know, we like red. Our customers love red, so let's give them red. So now I can match any dialogue in my entire application using the XAMPP ribbon window without having to have a ribbon in the window. Okay, so feel free to use the XAMPP ribbon window with or without a ribbon and get that Office look and feel for your entire application. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Well, let's get back to where we were before. So I'm going to undo all those changes because I want to get back to the sample we had before. Okay, so one of the most common scenarios for any type of Office-inspired app is rich text. It could be notes, it could be actual documents you need to be editing. Anything dealing with rich text, we have a solution for you. So what you want to do is you want to use our XAMPP rich text editor. So simply type XAMPP rich text editor. I'm going to click and drag this onto our design surface. We're going to have some references added. I'm going to right click and reset our layout to take up the entire space. And now we have a rich text editor. Well, that's pretty cool. But you know, our rich text editor, it's kind of empty right now. We can't do much with it. We can't even format text. So if we run the app, you know, we can type text in here. That's cool. But we can't really do anything with it. What I want to do is I want to hook these buttons up to this text so we can start formatting and actually creating some rich text. So I'm going to start by giving our rich text editor a name. And then I'm going to simply select a button. So you can do this a couple different ways. One way to do it, you hand code it in XAML. And I like to do this. I like to hand type on my XAML. So I can set the command to the editing commands dot toggle bold. Okay, now I've set this command, but it needs a target, right? So I'm going to set the command target to a binding element name RTE. Okay, so what this is saying is we're going to say, hey, our command target, what we're targeting here is our rich text editor. And whenever I click this button, I want to invoke the toggle bold command. So let's go ahead and run this app. We're going to type some text into the text area. I'm going to double click to highlight it, we'll hit bold, and sure enough, it's bolded. Awesome. Another thing you could do is you could simply go to your properties and set the command here. In this case, we'll say toggle italic. Okay, but you still have to set your command target. So you can set your command target. We'll go create a data binding. You can say an element name. Then you look through here, okay, what are we looking for in this area? We don't want the XAMPP ribbon, we were looking for the RTE. Run the app. Type some text. Let's do some italics and bold. Awesome. We'll hit it again. Remove them. Great. And of course, the last thing would be to do our underline. So we'll command it. And you don't have to type editing commands. You can actually just shorthand it. So we can say toggle underline. But we still have to set our command target. And of course, it's a binding to our element RTE. Run the app one more time. Type some awesome rich text, and we'll go ahead and underline it, italicize, remove. Wonderful. So with very little code, we're already getting the ability to add Word-like behavior to our WPF application. Well, now we need a way to actually load some information into here, right? We need data because you're either opening documents or you're reading from a view model. Now, I can show you how to open a document, but I'd rather not because that's pretty easy. What I'd rather show you is how to data bind to some type of content that's being fed from a view model. So if we take a quick look at our code behind, we'll see that our data context is being set to a new instance of this main view model. So I'm going to go ahead and open up this main window view model. We're going to see we have a content property of type string. It's set to null. And of course, we're implementing inode property change because every view model you write should implement inotify property changed. Okay, great. So that means we have a content property that we want to data bind to. So how do we do that? How do we create that binding between our view model and this rich text editor? Because if I'm looking at this rich text editor, I don't see a value property. I don't see a text property I can bind to. So how do I do this? Well, we do this with what's called a document adapter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new RTF document adapter. Now, I want to point out that in order to get this document adapter, you need to add a reference manually to Infragistics WPF4 documents.richText document RTF 14.1. Okay, this is where this rich text format document adapter exists. Okay, but once you've added that, we can now data bind this document to the element RTE. We want to set its path to its document. Okay, so this is creating that binding between the adapter itself and the rich text editor we care about. Then we have to set the value, and the value is of course binding to our content property of our view model. Now keep in mind, we can have multiple document adapters for a single rich text editor, which is really cool. Let's run the application. And to prove that this is hitting, that we're setting this information, let me minimize that. Let's go to our content property. I'm going to hit a setter right there. I'm going to hit a little breakpoint right in the setter. Now I'm going to come in and I'm going to type some text. But as you see, I can't lose focus of this control, right? I mean, how do we get this to update? Well, let's close this out. Let's check this out really quick. Well, when we close the app, of course, we lose focus. But I want to see our options for updating the binding. So let's go back and we want to set the refresh trigger. As you can see, we have content change. This is every time you type a character. Delayed, you can say, wait 30 seconds from the last time I stopped typing. Explicit or lost focus. Let's go content change. Now let's run the app. Remember, we have that breakpoint set. Now I'm going to type a single character. Oh, I removed that breakpoint. Let me put that breakpoint back. Now I'm going to hit that character again, and there we go. Now we can see our RTF that's been generated, and it's a lot. It's a lot of RTF, a lot of information for rich text, and this follows the Microsoft standard for RTF, and this allows us to have parity between Microsoft Office as well as our RTF adapters and your content within your application. So now you have an idea how you can start creating Word type applications, right? So let's go ahead and move on to something else that's pretty cool. Let's check out that new Visio or diagramming control that I was talking about earlier. Now this is really cool. Okay, so how easy is it to add diagramming to your WPF project? Well, let's just see. We're going to look for the XAMPP diagram toolbox. I'm just going to go ahead and drag this over. We're going to reset the layout. And of course, we don't want it to column span, so I'm going to delete this line of code. Now I'm going to take the XAMPP diagram control. I'm going to go ahead and drag it into the other side. Let's go ahead and reset its layout. And let's go ahead and set this as the new startup so I can hit F5, run the application. We'll go ahead and pull this out, and let's just start dragging some shapes onto our design surface. Okay, what about connections? Well, that's easy. Let's just start making some connections. You want a recursive connection? No problem. Let's create a recursive connection. You want to change some elements about a shape? Go ahead. Let's go ahead and change the color of it. You want to change the color of all the shapes? No problem. Select a group and change its fill. All right, so this is going to behave exactly like you would expect Visio to behave. We mimic a lot of the behaviors, a lot of the functionality from Visio, so your users, when you add this to your WPF app, your users coming from Visio don't have to relearn shortcuts or keyboard shortcuts or how things work. It's just going to be familiar because they're familiar with Visio. Well, that's so cool for when you want to automatically set things up, but what about when you want to manually define objects? Well, no problem. Let's go ahead and start manually hooking up or creating these shapes and connecting these shapes within your diagramming surface. So the first thing we need to start off with is what's called a diagram node. So we're going to create a diagram node. I'm going to give it a name. I'll call it start. Next, I want to set the shape, right? What kind of type? What is the node type? Where are we going to make this look like? So we can make it look like a cross. That'll work. And then I want to position this somewhere within the design surface. So if the top left is 0, 0, I'm going to bring it over to the right 50 and drop it down 100. That sounds good. That's pretty cool. So let's go ahead and copy this line. We'll rename this to end. And I want to go ahead and change this to an ellipse. That works for me. But the position's not really where I want it to be. So I'm just going to change the position a little bit to make it 200, 100. Okay, great. We have our two shapes, but what about connecting these? How do we connect the cross to the ellipse? Easy. We're going to go ahead and we're going to create a new diagram connection. This is the object that's going to connect the 2 points. And making that connection is extremely simple. We're going to just set the start node name, which we named start, and the end node name we named end. And then, you know what? As you can see in the design surface, we had that connection made. So it drew the connection between the two shapes. But I want to set the end cap type. I don't know, how about a diamond? Right? That'll work. Let's run the application. So now our app now has the two shapes we manually define in XAML, but we can also add to it by using our toolbox and dragging elements from the toolbox onto our design surface. And that's how easy it is to add diagramming support and functionality to your WPF applications. Now, like I said, right now, the version you have in your toolbox in 14.1 is at CTP and does not support data binding. But when 14.2 is released, it will have data binding support. All right, now the last demo I want to show, getting a little short on time, is Excel. Who doesn't love Excel? Excel runs the enterprise. So it's important that you have the ability to create integrated experiences that communicate and work back and forth with Excel documents that are generated in Word and directly into your application. So the app I'm working with now, we have a sample Excel spreadsheet. I have some code in the code behind here to help save some time. And all we need to do is I'm going to add our new XAMPP spreadsheet control. But like I said, I have a special build that I'm going to be using. So I'm just going to locate that under my general. I'm going to drag this onto my design surface and reset its layout. Now, We have some code behind pre-filled out, so I know that I have to name this something specific, so I'm going to name this spreadsheet. And then let's go to our code behind and uncomment some code. All we're doing here is loading the Excel document sample.xlsx. So we're creating a new file stream. We're using the file.open. We're getting the current directory. We're getting the file. And of course, we're setting the file mode at open because we're not doing any type of saving right now. And then we're setting the spreadsheet's workbook to workbook.load, which is going to return a workbook instance. And we're just loading that stream. Okay, that's all that's going on. And this is going to happen when the application loads. So I'm going to save all my changes here. Let's go ahead, set the Excel as our startup project, hit F5. And then the expectation is we should have an Excel spreadsheet load into our control, and we do. And as you can see, we have all the selection you would be expecting. We have editing capabilities. We also have support undo, so I can Control Z and undo that. We can do selection across cells, or I can hold my shift down like I did there, select all cells, hold the control, select other cells. I can change one cell, then hit Control Enter and update all cells to be the same value. As you can see, this Excel type spreadsheet control, the XAMPP spreadsheet control, is going to mimic and be Excel without ever having to have Excel installed. You will be able to open Excel documents, save Excel documents, and then go back to Microsoft Excel and open them and edit them and go back and forth without ever having to have Excel installed on your client machine. That's really powerful, and that's extremely cool. That's really cool. Now I want to remind you that what you're seeing now is a special version. I have a newer version than what you have access to in your toolbox. I'm using a newer 14.2 build. You have access to the CTP version, which does not support editing right now. It's mainly a read-only Excel document or an Excel control. So, but when this control launches or releases as a RTM control in 14.2, it's going to have the majority of all the Excel functionality that you would expect. Sorry, but that's all the time I have today for demos. But I would like to take some time to mention some of the other controls we have that allow you to build Office-inspired applications, such as our new Gantt control. You can now basically build Microsoft Project in your own custom application. You can actually load Microsoft Project files into our Gantt control, modify them, and save them back out to Microsoft Project files. We have scheduling. If you guys are familiar with the version of OneNote for Windows 8 Store applications, this is a control inspired by that radial menu. We have Outlook bars, we have spell checkers, we have color pickers. We have just about every control you need to build every version or every Office product. And we can even go beyond Office and say Visual Studio or Microsoft inspired. We have docking managers, and we're coming out with a property grid. We have a syntax editor. So you can really build a gamut of Microsoft products without having to have Microsoft installed. I'd also like to mention that we have a couple of Office-inspired showcases built in WPF. We have one that's available now at the Infragistics website. It's called IG Outlook, and this app is Outlook, and it was built using best practices. So it's built with Prism. This is a modular application. It's a composite app. It uses inversion of control with dependency injection. It uses Unity. We're talking MVVM, event aggregation, commanding, composite commands. I mean, this is a production application. This is just no sample that was thrown together, slapped by code behind. This is best practices for building apps, and we show you how to do that with our controls. That's available now. We also have IG Word. So IG Word is an application that's going to mimic Word. It's not available now, but it will be when 14.2 releases. And it's going to be the same thing. This is built with Prism. This is built with MVVM using Unity for dependency injection. I mean, these are best practices on how to build production apps. And you can expect more Office-inspired showcases from Infragistics to help provide you guidance on how to build these type of applications using our controls. So that about sums it up for this webinar. Of course, this webinar was all about building Office-inspired applications, both for Windows Forms and with WPF. As you can see, both Windows Forms and WPF, we have a number of controls that allow you to build Office-inspired applications. Thank you very much for attending this. Anand will stay on the call to answer some questions. Unfortunately, I have to drop off, but if you have any questions for me personally that may not be answered or you can't get answered right away, email me directly, blagunas@infragistics.com. You can also reach me on Twitter @BrianLagunas, and please visit my blog, brianlagunas.com, where I show you a lot of tips and tricks on not just Infragistics controls, but building software in general. Thanks again, and hope to see you in the next webinar.